Welcome to the second episode in the Change Climate Change series by Girl Scout Troop 5953. In this episode, we will discuss one of the effects of climate change, an increase in the intensity and frequency of floods. Floods are caused by a variety of things. However, as the Earth warms due to climate change, the northern and southern polar caps melt, leading to an increase in sea level. In fact, according to climate.gov, the water levels have risen about 8 to 9 inches since 1880. Even more unsettling is that approximately a third of this action has arisen in the last 2.5 decades, as approximately 71% of the Earth's surface is water as stated by the National Geographic. This change's urgency is made even more drastic. With all this information, you may be wanting evidence. Does this impact me? Are there really floods caused by climate change? Yes, and even if you do not live near the coast, rain can cause flooding. In central China in July of 2021, torrential downpours hit, which according to NASA could drop 10 inches of rain in just 2 hours. CNN reported on a weather station in Zhangzhou a city hit, which called this phenomenon an occurrence once in 1,000 years. But that's not all. European floods in the Netherlands, Germany, and Belgium could have seen up to 2 months' worth of rain in the time period of just one day. The Netherlands city of Roermond was forced to evacuate almost 5,000 residents, according to NASA. Flooding during the night caught many residents in this July 2021 time period off guard, proving extremely deadly and destroying much property. Humans are not the only ones affected by the melting of ice. Not only are the polar ice caps melting, but glaciers as well. In fact, the World Wildlife Fund states that 95% of the thickest and oldest ice in the Arctic has already melted. Narwhals depend on the air from between the small cracks in the ice when they dive. If the ice melts, they become vulnerable to predators. Ice ensures the survival of their species. Walruses also depend on ice. It is here that they gather in groups called holeouts to reproduce and reconvene. These are commonly placed near areas in which they can gather food. When these areas become scarce, where will they breed? These are just a few instances cited by the World Wildlife Fund in which human activities could lead to the decline of animal species. If we are to ensure their prosperity, we must slow and eventually stop climate change. Let us review this information. For our first question, approximately how much have water levels risen since 1880? Is it A, 8 to 9 inches, B, 4 to 5 inches, or C, 15 to 16 inches? The answer is A, 8 to 9 inches. Now for our second question, what are some effects of flooding? A decreased probability that flooding will occur in such power after the flood, B, an increased amount of damage to animal habitats, or C, human fatalities. The answers are both B and C. Now, for our final question, what is the percent of the most ancient and thick ice that has melted in the Arctic? Is it A, 74%, B, 95%, or C, 68%? And the answer is B, 95%. Now, as we know, some of the larger causes of floods, such as those in Europe and China, are the melting of the polar ice caps. However, there are other causes as well. Greenland's ice sheets are rapidly declining in size. NASA has found that they shed an average of 303 gigatons of ice per year since 2004, larger than Antarctica, who sheds 118 gigatons of ice per year. What does this mean? This means that, unless stopped, coastal towns and cities will continue to lose land and flood with greater and greater intensity. In fact, in 2019, BBC reported that Venice had reached the highest tide in 50 years. The mayor of Venice stated that this was part of the cost of climate change. St. Mark's Basilica, among other historical landmarks and pieces of art that were damaged, had to undergo rigorous repair processes. But this is not all. Along with damaging long-withstanding historical monuments, destroying property, and causing numerous fatalities and permanent injuries, climate change reduces the size of islands, property, and other land. Now it is time for our final review. How many gigatons of ice were shed per year since 2004 in Greenland? A. 278 gigatons, B. 105 gigatons, or C. 303 gigatons? And the answer is C. 303 gigatons. Now for our second question. What is one consequence of rising sea levels? A. Increased hurricane intensity. B. Increased risk of water damage to coastal historical monuments. Or C. Decreased precipitation. And the answer is B. Now it is time for our third and final question. Which city was flooded to the highest tide it had seen in 50 years recently? A. Florence. B. Rome. Or C. Venice? And the answer is C. Venice. In conclusion, we have discussed the causes of floods, the melting of polar ice caps and ice sheets such as those found in Greenland, the effects of floods on both humans and animals such as the loss of habitat and permanent injuries. This has led to a mounting global crisis from which no one is completely safe. However, as we discussed in the previous video, there are ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you for watching, and please continue to protect the planet.